What is going on, alpha males? Welcome to Alpha Male Podcast, the podcast where we talk about what it means to be a man, the right way, with God Almighty at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. Today's going to be a little bit different. I know that it may be a little bit of a narrow topic, but even if you never plan on taking the Alaska Ferry, hopefully you'll find this interesting. There'll be some tips for travel, some philosophy, logistics, hopefully something for everybody. The Alaska Ferry. My wife and I right now, we're in Petersburg, Alaska. If I look out the window, I can look at the ocean and see mountains. If I meander down the street here in Petersburg, I can see glaciers, massive glaciers. Rewinding how we got here. If you follow my wife and I, listen to the podcast regularly, you'll know that we live as neo-nomads, strangers and pilgrims on the earth. We travel around, sojourning here and there, trying to figure out the last several years, by God's grace, where we might want to settle down and live. Alaska was high on our list. It's one of the places we haven't lived yet. I've been to 49 of the 50 states. I've lived in a lot of them. My wife has lived in a lot of them as well, both before and after we've been married. I think our favorite so far is Idaho, and we're trying to see how Alaska fits into that. And on that, we've spent much time recently. The fourth time I've lived in Idaho, and I really like Idaho. My wife really likes northern Idaho. We thought we'd try Alaska, so after northern Idaho, we traveled across Washington, stayed in Washington a short time. Their laws and legislation are just, let's just say, not my flavor. We got on the ferry. Now, we got on the ferry sans car, sans our normal living arrangement. We did not take the car. The car was overly expensive. Now, if we decide we're going to live in Alaska and buy property in Alaska, by God's grace, we'll be able to get the car over here. But the car was just too expensive. It didn't make financial sense to bring the car and bring it right back if we decided Alaska really wasn't for us. So we got on the ferry in Bellingham, Washington. That is the lower 48 states hub for the Alaska Ferry. The Alaska Ferry system, or the Alaska Highway system, is operated, I believe, by the state of Alaska. It's an Alaska state vessel. It is Alaska state employees, I believe, that work the vessel. It does many stops, and I'm not going to mention all of them. But the one you're probably interested in if you're getting on the lower 48 is Bellingham, Washington. It's where we got on, and it travels through quite a ways of British Columbia. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We got on with quite a few guns. I don't know why my wife insists on having so much guns and ammo, but just kidding, that's me. But took quite a few guns, and we took our dog, Alexander Hamilton, a 100 and about 10-pound Rhodesian Ridgeback, although he may have lost some weight on the voyage. Let's talk about just getting on the ferry. If it were just you, pretty straightforward process. You buy your tickets. You walk up, you show ID, you show your ticket, and you get on the ferry. It is so much less intrusive than the TSA, than dealing with airlines. Literally, you just walk on, you carry your bags on the ferry, that's it. There's no strip searches, there's no magneto searches, there's none of that stuff. You literally, again, just show them your pass, walk on the ferry. Show them your ID, show them your pass, and walk on the ferry. You carry your bags on the ferry, you sit down. Now, you can get cabins on the ferry. My wife and I opted to not get cabins on the ferry. In fact, she was quite excited. I think one of the main things she was looking forward to on the trip was camping on a tent on a boat, which we did. We slept for a couple of days on the boat in a tent. You can pitch your tent on the back of the ship. Near the stern, there's, I think, 8 stories on the Columbia, which is the vessel that we took. I don't know if they're all the same, but there are 2 decks, and there are several decks, but there's 2 decks in which you can camp on with no extra charge. You just pitch your tent, which we did. And I quite liked it. I think I would prefer it. And we'll get to that maybe at the end, getting into this being maybe a blue-collar cruise. But I really like sleeping in a tent, hanging out with my wife, reading my Bible, and the views are just stunning. I mean, I can't describe it in words, and pictures don't do it justice, but God's word probably reflects it when it says in Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows us his handiwork. Just to see the mountains rising out of the ocean and realize you're just kind of sailing between mountaintops submerged in the Pacific Ocean. Just the beauty of the water and the mountains and the snow. It's just epic and beautiful. I lost count of how many humpback whales we saw. We saw porpoises, but just humpback whales literally jumping out of the water behind the boat. Just amazing. It was beautiful. Rewinding a little bit to the logistics, if you were just getting on the boat, that would be it. One of the big things we ran into the day we were leaving, we were bringing our dog. And if you're bringing your dog to Alaska, it needs a clean bill of health. I totally spaced that. I'll take the hit for that. I think I may have read something about it months ago when we were preparing and totally forgot. We got to the ferry with a couple of hours to spare, and we showed up and they said, nope, can't get on until you get a clean bill of health because Alaska is a quarantine state. You need to get a clean bill of health for your dog. So we called, I don't know how many vets, maybe 10 different vets, and we finally got him to be seen and got a clean bill of health. Cost us like $150. It turns out he needed one shot. I got him the shot, got him the checkup, which probably would have been cheaper he probably had that shot if we could just track it down. But anyway, that was our fault. That was my fault. So we had to get him seen, get him a clean bill of health, at which point we were able to get our boarding passes. And if you're traveling with a dog without a vehicle, you had to have a crate. So if you have a, let's say, average-sized dog, not that big a deal, but we have a big dog. He's a big Rhodesian Ridgeback. The crate alone was quite logistically a struggle physically to get on, especially for my wife, to get on the ferry, because I was dealing with the guns, which we'll get to next. One of the things that kind of stinks about the ferry is if you're traveling with the dog has to stay below on the car deck in the crate, and every several hours, I think it's 4 to 6 or 6 to 8 hours, you can take your dog and walk him around the lower deck. So he's not allowed in the passenger areas, which kind of stinks. And then when you go to port, you can let him off, which he really enjoyed. When we'd go to port, we'd make sure we'd spend the time with him, exercising him, running around the different cities that you stop at, that you go to port at. So the dog logistics was quite a hassle. Now, if you have a vehicle, you can leave your dog in the vehicle and drive your vehicle on. That would be less of a hassle. The guns were no hassle. I had many guns. A lot of guns that I brought on the trip because I plan on doing some hunting. I always try and have guns for self-protection, self-defense, and Alaska is no different. So, yeah, guns, no, it's not like the airlines at all. I declared it to the employee that worked there. He walked me to where their gun safe is, and the long guns and stuff go in the gun safe. The ammo, just so I didn't have to carry it, was nice to just put in the gun safe. It was not a big deal. Nobody cared. It's not like the airlines where you have to go if you've ever flown with guns, which I do quite a bit or have done in the past quite a bit. I try and fly less now, but it's nowhere near as big a hassle. Nobody seems to care. You just walk on with the guns, put them in the thing. And my wife kind of pointed this out to me, so I'll give her credit. She said on the Alaska Ferry, it's kind of big boy rules, right? There's not all these crazy signs like don't feed the whales and don't jump over the side or no running. Like, it's big boy rules. They expect you to behave by big boy rules on the ferry, and I really like that. I enjoy the liberty and the freedom that the ferry offers over the airlines, not to mention the views and the travel. So the guns, logistically, not a big deal as long as you can carry them on. And again, if you have a vehicle, even less of a hassle. You just put them in the vehicle. But it was not that bad with the guns at all. The baggage, the luggage, you just carry it on. So not a big deal at all. Not a hassle like TSA where they go through your bags and all that stuff. It was fantastic. It was a good experience. It was like I think traveling on the airlines was, decades ago. Now, we got on rather in Bellingham. And again, aside from the laws in Washington's not a horrible state. It's really beautiful. It's really rugged. It's not like Idaho to me, but it's a cool state. There's a lot of freedom there if you can get out of the cities, although their gun laws have gotten a lot more restrictive as of late. But we got on in Bellingham. And then we stopped in Ketchikan. We had several hours, I think 3 hours in Ketchikan. Ketchikan was okay. I liked it. Honestly, a little bit too big for my taste, but not bad. To be fair, we didn't stay overnight there or anything, but Ketchikan seemed like a cool place. If you wanted a little bit more of the big city convenience, bigger, than where we're at now, Ketchikan was pretty cool. It's the southernmost, I think, big city in Alaska. Getting there, though, we traveled through quite a bit of the Inside Passage of British Columbia. There was some open water. If you don't know the Inside Passage, you'll have to look that up on a map. But I was astonished at how calm, because I spent quite a bit of time on ship growing up. My father's a commercial fisherman, his father before him. I did it before I joined the Marine Corps. So I was amazed. Even the Chesapeake Bay is choppier than much of the Inside Passage going up through Canada and Alaska. It was calm, beautiful water, filled with all manner of beautiful creatures. Again, humpback whales we saw. I can't remember the number, but a lot. Just the views. Again, my words and pictures, they just won't do it justice. I'll probably make, if you're listening to this on Spotify, one of those pictures the thumbnail, but just stunning. The ship itself, again, we were on the Columbia. I don't know how much the ships differ, but it was 8 stories. The car deck, I think, starts on level 3 and goes to level 5, so that's 2 stories. And you get a couple of other decks. You could stay in a room if you chose to do that. You can also sleep on deck if you want to pitch a tent. If you don't want to pitch a tent, they have the solarium. It's basically just like a partial greenhouse where you can look up and see the sun, and the sun shines down through, and there's heaters hanging up above. And again, it's big boy rules. They're like glowing red iron pipes, and nobody has signs, don't touch the heaters, they're hot. Of course they're hot, they're glowing red iron. But they keep it pretty warm in there. So you could, and they have lawn chairs under there, so you could literally just grab a sleeping bag or a blanket and get on the ferry and sleep under the solarium, which is pretty cool. You could, if you're not accustomed to sleeping on the ground, I sleep on the ground pretty regularly, but if you're not accustomed to that, sleeping on the deck may be uncomfortable, so you may want to bring an air mattress. But you could literally just go to Walmart, buy an air mattress, and use it, So there are all those options. There is a galley on deck, which is basically just a dining room. I think they had a fancier one and just a main galley with cheeseburgers and french fries. We packed our food. I think my wife bought food there. I didn't buy anything there except for a cup of decaf coffee. It was instant. Not the best, but I just wanted something warm to drink one morning. But there is food there if you just wanted to eat that food. We packed food. So logistically, I would say bring food if you're more of a healthy eater. But if you don't care and you normally eat cheeseburgers and french fries, they have plenty of stuff like that, grilled cheese on the ferry. It was pretty cool. Pretty cool experience. We, again, pitched a tent on the back of the ship, which was really cool. I really enjoyed it. Now, if you're not accustomed to sleeping in tents and sleeping on the ground and pitching a tent and high winds and stuff like that, maybe you don't want to start off doing it here. But if you're accustomed to it, you're a normal camper, things like that, a pretty cool experience, which I'll start transitioning. Perhaps this is a really cool blue-collar cruise. Now, to be fair, I've never taken a cruise. I've spent quite a bit of time on ship, but I've never taken a cruise, never done a cruise. I don't know that I would enjoy a cruise. And I was mentioning to my wife, and she agreed, and she, by God's grace, knows me pretty well, that I think I like this better than I would have liked a cruise. Because fancy dinners and mandatory fun time doing a mandatory activity, that's just not me. That's just, I'll try to enjoy it if I'm there, but that's just not me. Sleeping on a tent on the back of a ship, that's more my style. In my free time, reading my Bible, practicing my knot tying on deck, working out with my backpack on open deck. that's more my style. I don't need mandatory fun time and people, and dancing circuses and clowns to entertain me. Just looking at the mountains. I was amazed. I downloaded a bunch of stuff thinking I would want to listen to a bunch of podcasts and stuff like that. But really, most of the time I was just so happy to just read my Bible and look up and enjoy the view. Read my Bible for a couple of minutes and look up and enjoy the view. And sometimes I was just so stunned by the beauty of God's creation that I would just spend large chunks of time just looking at the ocean and the mountains and the whales and just letting the days pass. But I think, honestly, even though it was nowhere near as expensive, I would have enjoyed it more just because of my personality, just because that's me, right? I think I would have enjoyed sitting on the back of the deck, practicing my knot tying, reading my Bible, sleeping in a tent with my wife, much more than I would enjoy a cruise in a fancy room with heating and air conditioning and fancy food. It's not me. If that's you, then maybe you would enjoy a cruise better, but if you were looking for like a blue collar, I did one on like a blue collar safari, average Joe's safari, which maybe I'll revisit or repost soon because it's getting on hunting season. But if you're looking for like an average Joe's cruise and Alaska appeals to you, you could get on the ferry and just make it its own thing. Like you could get on it. It's not meant to be a vacation. It's meant to be a mode of transportation. It's a ferry. It's meant to get you from A to B, but it's just so stunning and so different. So if you're looking for like a blue collar, affordable trip on the ocean, on the Inside Passage, you might look at getting on the ferry, getting on in like Bellingham, Washington, and then taking it. You can take it all the way up to, you could take it all the way to the Aleutian Islands. You could take it to like Kodiak. You could take it all the way up the Inside Passage, right? Look at all the different ports of call. You could, go to Sitka, wherever place you want to go. You could go all the way up to Haines, which if you don't know is really far north on the Inside Passage. You could go there, or you could do something pretty cool that we thought about and didn't do. But you could, if you don't care about handguns, you could take a shotgun and you could get on somewhere like North Idaho and you could drive literally all the way through Canada to Haines and take the ferry back. Something like that. Pick your own adventure. Again, it's not mandatory fun. You have to do this. You could, take a partial ferry. You could get on in Bellingham and go to, let's say, Ketchikan, stay for a couple of days in Ketchikan, and get back on the ferry again and go to Haines and hang out there, and then take the ferry back. And then maybe on the way back you stop in Sitka or Wrangell or Petersburg. It's really kind of cool. But if you wanted to do it affordably, you could probably just get on for a couple of days, go somewhere, maybe stay for a day or two, and then come back. And I think the ferry itself is worth it. Just is worth it. So I just thought, even if you weren't thinking about taking the ferry or interested in taking the ferry, you'd like this episode anyway. And maybe you're thinking about it now. Maybe it's something you might want to do. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, maybe it doesn't appeal to as broad an audience, but I thought I would put it out. Hopefully it would help some people, and maybe some people will find the podcast that are thinking about taking the ferry with guns and dogs, because I didn't see that covered a lot of places. So maybe that'll funnel people into the podcast. On that note, if you like this podcast, you may also like Gunfighter Life if you're into guns. And if you care about the important stuff, Simple Man Sermons. That's the flagship podcast, Simple Man Sermons. You may like that as well. Anyway, with that, the tactical tip of the day. There are places to charge your phone there, but electronic devices, really, if you're going to go, have a battery pack or two and have it charged. My wife goes through phone battery like, I don't even know. It's like her phone is like almost constantly on E, in the red. Right, so have some battery packs. They're worth the money to spend on there, because if you are camping like on the deck, then there's not outlets there, so you'd have to like go down and sit somewhere inside, which is not a big deal. But just what I would advise doing is having a couple of battery packs, and then when you do go below decks, plugging them in and charging them, or when you go to get a shower, there's showers on deck, plugging your battery packs in and recharging those. But have a couple of battery packs. That's just a good pro tip there for any travel, but especially on the ferry or places like it. You don't want to get stuck out somewhere and then your battery's dead and you're trying to navigate in a city in Alaska you've never been to and you missed a ferry and you don't get back on it. Because again, it's big boy rules. They don't do like a roll call. If you miss a ferry, I think you pretty much just missed a ferry. They don't like check a roster. So that's on you. So anyway, bring some battery packs. Tactical verse of the day. Already read from Psalm 19. That's one of my favorites. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows us his handiwork. So I'm going to quote another one. The heavens are yours. The earth also is yours. The world and all its fullness. You have founded them. The north and the south. You have created them. God is the author, the creator of every living thing, from every wave in the ocean, every mountain on the earth, every tree on every hillside, every fish, every whale, every beast that roams the earth. God is the creator of them all. And he created you, and he created me. And he doesn't make junk, and he doesn't make mistakes. When you see God's creation, be aware, because it can be so beautiful, lest you fall into idolatry and some new age garbage like Mother Earth. There is no Mother Earth. There's only Father God. He created that. Don't worship the creation. Worship the Creator. But when you see the beauty and awesomeness of his creation, realize that's just a reflection, a part of what God created. Nothing can be compared with God. If God's creation is so beautiful, how beautiful must God be? With that, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.